war in the Gaza Strip, which has in fact disproportionately.
Yeah, and she still works for my company. Yeah, I think she's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find them disreputable.
There you have Ben Shapiro.
Ban, 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 ban. See, like I mean, this is obviously on TOIT network, so one thing I don't really like about Ben Shapiro is just that this guy's just not just him alone. It's mostly the conservative party or whatnot. They would like to call Democrats as crybabies, always complaining. Freedom of speech doesn't exist in the West no more because of So whenever you go against what they believe, whenever you say anything against what they believe, they'll come right after you. Same thing the right, the left would do, and the same thing the right would do at the same time. So it's like I don't agree with Candace Owens on certain things, on a lot of things, anyways. But sometimes, what's like one thing I like about her, she's not afraid to speak the truth, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter. Cause anyone else could have just caved in. Okay, I work for a Jewish owner of this company or whatnot. He worked for Ben Shapiro, who is Jewish himself. Obviously, at the network, maybe there's many people like there's a lot of people that's taking the Israel side over Palestinian side. So it's easy for her to conform to that. But she opted not to do that. She said, "No, I'm going to speak against what's not right." And like, what else can you? How can you have any problem with that? Even though you don't agree with it, doesn't mean she's not wrong. And for him to come out and say stuff like this, like if I am Candace Owens, I would be sitting down and rethinking about everything, reevaluating everything, and if this is the type of person you would like to work for, someone that will come out instead of it's just sad to really see this happening, but hey.
Calling his Daily Wire colleague Candace Owens disgraceful over her comments and coverage of the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip, which has in fact disproportionately killed thousands of civilians, including children. Now, showing concern for innocent civilians dying is apparently a big no-no for Ben Shapiro, who until now has kind of shied away from being overly critical of Candace Owens or any of his colleagues publicly. Just keep in mind the types of things that Matt Walsh has said on his show. But with that said, let's dive in a little bit, see what Candace Owens has said about this issue on the record, and maybe we can figure out what it is exactly that Ben Shapiro finds so disgraceful. Now, this tweet from November 3rd certainly caught my attention, mostly because I agree with it, and I was shocked that she tweeted anything that I would agree with. But here's what she said. No government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide, ever. There's no justification for a genocide. I can't believe this even needs to be said or is even considered the least bit controversial to state. Now, there are other
Honestly,
things I'm going to
just by that tweet alone, you can tell Candace does not really. She doesn't care about, like, Ben's favorite line, "Sex doesn't care about your feelings." Candace does not care about your feelings. She's saying exactly what's going on. No matter how you feel about her or how you feel about what she's saying, that's the fact. And you can try to alter or change around the word, the vocabulary around that. That does not change the fact. The fact is that Israel is committed genocide. We can say here and say it otherwise, but the truth is there. And and for me, I'm not against nor for Israel, honestly, because at the end of the day, I like people. I want to see people living, thriving, doing well. I don't want no one's hatred for someone else to die. But then we have to be able to distinguish the difference between Israelis and the government. Just like certain things that our U.S. government would do, we don't agree with. That don't mean Americans are the worst people in the world, because we're not. It's just that our leaders sometimes make some decisions that take some decisions that's not good. That doesn't fully represent the country. So that's what we should be more worried about and concerned about, and not having any hatred towards Jewish people, because majority of them, not like majority of them are good people. They don't want to see Palestinian being bombed every single day. They don't want to see that. But what can you do?
Share with you in regard to her coverage and her commentary, including what she tweeted out soon after that video of Ben Shapiro was released. But before we get to all of that, Cenk, what are your thoughts about Candace Owens' tweet?
No, the tweet is 100% fine.
Yeah.
And so that's not the issue. Look, I'm conflicted about the right wing that is now saying that Israel's wrong. And partly because, hey, look, if we have bipartisan agreement that we should not be funding the atrocities that's happening in Gaza, and we should treat Palestinians as human beings and value them, that's fantastic. And I've been waiting for that breakthrough to happen for a long, long time. On the other hand, there are some in the right wing that are doing it, might be doing it for the wrong reasons. And so Candace did support Kanye West after he said awful comments about Jewish people, Hitler, etc. And so that gives me very significant pause. And then Tucker Carlson has also said things that may give me pause about his views of Jewish Americans, etc. And so that's why this is a tough issue where it feels to me, some of the leaders at least are accidentally right, maybe for the wrong reasons, and I'm worried about supporting that. At the same time, it's interesting the tack that Shapiro is taking, because so we have people here that disagree, hosts that disagree, and we just air it out. And we don't say they're despicable, we just have conversations and make sure both sides are
And honestly,
represented.
this is like one of the things that I really do respect about TYT as a company. Like you can tell about he's the CEO of the company, obviously, right? And a co-host or host, whatever, right? But you would never see Anna biting her tongue for anything. She would say exactly what's on her mind. And some other hosts, even a few days ago, I would have time to react to that video also, but they had a heated argument over Israel and Palestinian war, and you can see the CEO and the co-worker, whoever that guy, will have to really react to the video. But they were going head to head, and you can see that it wasn't from a malice, from a hateful place or anything like that, because he himself repeated so many times, this is what happened when you don't fully agree. And it's good to hear from both sides and really fight for a minute and then sit back and calm down and think about the whole thing. So like TYT is like, one thing about I love about them is the fact that you have a freedom to express exactly how you feel, and I have a freedom to react to your feelings in any ways that I want to see it, and obviously within the respect. But um, I don't know, Ben Shapiro. I mean, I don't know.
So he's taking a different tack, and that's interesting as well.
Yeah, I think it would be more helpful to engage in that conversation rather than talk about each other behind each other's backs, or I mean publicly, but not directly to one another. But with that said, I totally hear what you're saying, Cenk, because I do, of course, take into account some of the statements that Candace Owens has made in the past. I remember her being part of a congressional hearing where she said some incredibly creepy things that seem to provide cover and defend Hitler. So you should know that context, but you should also know this context. None of us really know who Candace Owens really is. Because if you dig deeper into her history, she used to run a blog that was highly critical of Donald Trump. She had a left-wing perspective on political issues, and then suddenly, without notice, she switched on pretty much everything. So I don't know what's actually in her heart or mind. What I do know is, taken in a vacuum, I think that tweet is totally fine. But of course, you should never look at anything as if it's in a vacuum, right? So you should take that context into consideration. Now, with that said, there was a conversation that she had with a Jewish comedian by the name of Ami Kozak on her show. And there were a few interesting things that came up in the context of that conversation. So I want to show you what I'm talking about. Let's take a look.
People are feeling like they can't even speak about this subject, or they can't talk to a person like the way that you and I are speaking without being called a Jew hater. And so it's kind of creating this weird situation where actually it's furthering the problem to keep calling people Jew haters. It's furthering the problem to call people anti-Semitic. It would be more helpful to actually try to see where you connect and see how you're feeling, because it humanizes things.
It's like that's the same argument people have against certain black people, right? It's like when something happened and we scream out racism all the time, it would come to a point where the word racism that wouldn't have any power at all. Like it would be so diluted because it's like certain not everything is racist, right? Not everyone is racist, and if we keep saying racism for every single thing that's out there, when the racist thing actually happened, there's nothing like you can't really cry over it. Nobody would really care. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, we used to be guys saying that every time anyway." So it's like, what's the difference? What difference does it make? That's what I think she's trying to convey here, right? Instead of saying anti-Semitic, anti-Semite, anti-Semitic for every little argument against the Jewish state, Israel. Sorry, everything you say is like, "Oh, you just anti-Semitic rhetoric or whatnot." That would make it difficult to even have any sensible conversation about anything at all, and it makes it very difficult for any one of us to really sit down and have a good argument about anything that's going on, because you just slapping everyone with a hateful speech that basically you can't really express your opinion honestly. So you are more worried about being labeled than telling the truth. When George Floyd things happened, not to connect this to that, had nothing to do with it, but when George Floyd thing happened, majority of most people running around saying it was due to racism. Some were saying it's just bad policing, and then the racism, bad policing. So it got to a point where, which I thought it was a problem. I think it was. I wouldn't say it was a racism per se, but I'm more of like that's just a police or a law enforcement just abusing their power, basically, right? And unfortunately, George Floyd happened to die within the process. But if we all sit around and say it's all because of racism, and I know that doesn't really apply to everyone. There's certain cops who are really good at their job, and some just bad, and majority of them are just good. Because that's why we don't hear that kind of things more often than anything. Does it happen to a black community more than others? Yeah, but my whole point is we got to be able to identify who's the worst police or bad police are than good ones. So instead of saying anti-Semitic to everything, find out who's really doing things or saying things that's hindering or that's bad to Jewish people than those who's just saying anything just to get attention. You know, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
Listen, I'm not Jewish, so I don't feel as radically or as motivated as you do about the situation that's happening. I am being selfish and American and saying I don't want a single dollar to go overseas because we've been in a bunch of useless wars, and that might be upsetting to hear. But there's no anti-Semitism in my heart when I say it. It's just me being consistent in how I've always felt.
So she's coming at it from an America first. We need to take care of our own country before we provide military funding for other countries. To be fair, she has been consistent on that. She doesn't want to send any aid to Ukraine. Whether you agree with that or not is an entirely different story. But it's not like she's singling out Israel while saying, no, we got to send a ton of funds to Ukraine. But before we go to you, Cenk, I want to go to one other moment in that interview. It's short. And I just want you to pay close attention to her facial expression when he responds to her, because I can kind of tell that she didn't like what he had to say. Let's watch.
I genuinely would vote against sending a single dollar to Israel, like I was vocal about not sending money to Ukraine or any other country. It's nothing personal. It's just I am very much America first. I'm looking at what's happening in America right now. I've been talking about what's happening at the universities. There's a million ways I would spend that money, and first and foremost, it would be to defend our own borders. And I don't say that to,
Right. I can understand that as a policy matter, as a foreign aid, how one believes about foreign aid, the libertarian isolationist position. I fully understand it. There were people who were fully pro-Israel in the world way back when, who used to also say no foreign aid because it entangles us with America in ways that we can't have our independence.
I just thought that was an interesting moment.
That's an interesting laser eyes there. Anyways, look, I think that her tweet in response to Ben Shapiro speaking out is a little bit more telling. Again, it could go in two directions. I'll give you both directions. But she wrote, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Yada yada, Christian. No,
be fair. You should read it. Read
okay, all right. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. So you can see that seems like a jab at Shapiro. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And then she also added Christ is king in the next tweet. Now, one way to interpret that is, hey, look at this wonderful religious person who's quoting Jesus and saying we should be decent and kind and loving to everyone. That's a very generous interpretation. But hey, again, it's not wrong that we shouldn't fund the financing of killing Palestinian civilians. The ungenerous version of looking at that is, here's a Bible quote against this Jewish guy, and he's slandering me here and saying evil things against me. And remember, Christ is king. And so and you can't serve both God and money, and presumably Shapiro's money there. Now it's technically true because she works for him, but it's also could be a reference to anti-Semitic tropes about controlling media, et cetera, which Kanye said and she backed initially. So you can see how it could go in both directions. But my guess is eventually there'll be a rift because Ben Shapiro does have a red line, and this is it, okay? And he tolerated the Kanye stuff barely. I thought he shouldn't have tolerated that. This is a policy disagreement.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
I think he's got his priorities mixed up there, but she's obviously getting very, very close to the red line, and she wants to make money on her own too. So if they split, she's going to lean. My guess is she's going to lean into the Christ is king kind of.
Honestly, yeah, I think Candace Owens is trying to force her way out of any contract with on Daily Wire. Honestly, that's the only thing I had, because obviously if your boss obviously being Ben Shapiro, you going against things. I mean, he's saying things like that. That's very personal to him. That's very personal to what he believes and stand for. You can see a disagreement within that. So it's like,
of talk.
Right. Look, final thing I'll say about this is in regard to her last tweet following his statement on that video that we showed you. I find passive aggressiveness to be the most cowardly thing on the planet. I like aggressiveness. So if you got something to say it, and say it to the person that you mean for it to be directed to. Don't be passive aggressive, and don't do this like middle-aged mom thing where you use social media to engage in your passive aggressiveness. Sorry, middle-aged moms, you guys know it's true. It happens all the time. We all see it. Okay?
I didn't even know that.
Let's be better than that. Okay. You want to say something, just say it. And say it directly to the person that you mean to say it to. That's all I'll say.
Look, we've had clashes here between the hosts.
Definitely, yep.
I'm surprised that they're not having a conversation about it. And remember, these are the guys who say cancel culture, don't do that.
That's
freedom
my
of
whole
speech.
argument.
I mean, look, I don't know why.
Argument. If you're gonna sit there and complain about the Democrat or the left wing party just canceling everyone for having an opinion, I think the ball's on your side now. So you have to be the one to really sit down and think about it. Like, should I even overreact, or should I? What's my limit? Does this go against my beliefs? And should I say anything to cancel Candace Owens in this case and prevent her from expressing how she really feel about the this whole Israel and Palestinian war? Because if you say anything against that, then you're just doing exactly what you blame the left of doing. So the only option we have is to really just sit around and have a conversation about this whole thing, hear from both sides, and hopefully that we come to a conclusion where everyone would agree with something, like one thing or another.
I'm helping them with their business model, but if I was them, I'd get Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens in a room. I'd have that conversation. It would be interesting to a lot of people,
Yep.
and they would get a lot of viewers. I think that's the right way to hash it out, no matter who's in trouble, left wing, right wing, or whatever motivation they have for saying what they did. The best way to do this is to talk it out. Thanks for watching the video, guys.
Yeah, man, that's another great video from TYT. You guys should subscribe to their channel. I think they're like the biggest news channel on YouTube right now. If I'm not mistaken. So great stuff, man. Great stuff.